Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the second session of today. We have more great presentations coming right up. And to start the second session, we have the talk titled A Phonetic and Phonological Analysis of the Word Final Post-Geminate Vocoid in Modern Standard Persian. And to present their work, let's welcome Elnaz Azimi to stage.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Elnaz. I'm coming from Stefano University. And today I'm going to talk about a vowel insertion. For now, let's pretend that we don't know that it's a vowel, because we're going to talk about if it's a vowel or not. So for now, the title is Word Final Post-Geminate Schwa Insertion in Modern Standard Persian, which is going to be a phonetic and phonological analysis. And first, before forgetting, it's the real flag of my country. And I'm going to go over an introduction, and I'm going to explain the questions, and we're going to go over the literature on vowel insertion in Persian and other languages. I'm going to explain methodology, results, and summary, and a bit of explanations. Well, the language that I'm working on is Modern Standard Persian, which is the official language of Iran. And the syllable structure of this language is CVCC, in which, as you can see, the coda clusters are allowed, but onset clusters are not. And geminates. In this language, word medial geminates are allowed, but word final geminates are so rare. And they only appear in loan words, which are borrowed from Arabic years ago and are kind of lexicalized in this language for now. So, like, we can call them Persian words by now because they are already lexicalized. And so, as a proof to consider this word final geminate as a phonological element, we can see that we have minimal pairs for these word final geminates. Like, for example, the words zan and zan are differentiated by only the word final geminate. And as you can already hear by my pronunciation, I think after zan, you can hear a vowel-like thing there, right? Why I'm saying vowel-like and why I am using the terminology vocoid here is that I don't want to imply a phonological function for this segment for now, okay? Because we're going to discuss if it's phonological or not. So by vocoid, I mean a vowel-like feature, which means like the frequencies and things. So as I already discussed, vocoid seems to appear after some of these word final geminates. And there has been no phonetic or phonological study working on that. So in this work, what I'm gonna inquire is that, is there any acoustic evidence of the existence of this vowel-like thing after word final geminates? And if there is, what are the acoustic features? And after which word final geminates these vocoid is more probable and frequent? And until here, it's all phonetic question. After that, we are going to deal with the phonological question that is it this element a phonological element or not? By that, I mean that does it contribute to syllabification or not? And also, the existence and the absence of this vocoid, is it a matter of insertion in some cases and deletion in the other cases? So, if we see that this vocoid plays a phonological role, which means if we see that it contributes to the syllabification of the words, it means that it's a phonological segment. And if it's an insertion, we can say that it's a inserted vowel, which means it's an epenthetic segment. What is the difference between epenthetic and excrescent vowel? As Hall says,
if a vowel plays a phonological role, it can be called epenthetic. If not, it's an expressant or elusive or whatever. So these are the questions. Let's very shortly go over the literature review. In the other languages, including Italian, Spanish, English, and Japanese, Korean, there has been a lot of studies on the vowel insertion. And there are a lot of contradictory studies. Like, for example, Bafile says that if a language does not allow a word final geminate, a word final consonant, it will trigger the gemination of the consonant. And after that, a vowel-like thing will appear. Something that we will see exactly the opposite happens in Persian. We have a word final geminate, and after that, we tend to pronounce a vowel-like thing. And in other languages, for example, in Italian, it has been discussed that a word final schwa only appears when a word final consonant is not geminate. Okay, so for some languages, this vowel-like thing appears after singletons. For some languages, it appears after gemination. For some languages, it appears and it geminates the coda consonant. Let's see how it behaves in Persian. So some other languages some other studies in other languages also have discussed the influence of the voice and the type of the geminate, word final geminate. So a lot of studies has argued, including Rice, has argued that the type of the word final geminate doesn't play an independent role in triggering the word final vocoid, but the voice does play a very important and an independent role. On the opposite, for example, Miato says that in Italian, the type of the word final geminate also plays a very important role in triggering this vocoid. And in Persian, there has been no phonetic or phonological work on this word final vocoid insertion. The only vowel epenthesis that has been worked on, that I think we will have a speaker that will elaborate more on it, is the vowel epenthesis in the onset cluster. As we saw, the syllable structure of Persian is CVCC, so it means that we don't like the onset cluster. So whenever there is a loan word that has a word final cluster, we add a vowel in between the clusters, or in between the consonants, or at the beginning of the consonant. For example, snack, if we borrow this word that we did, we would pronounce it as a snack. Or traffic, we would pronounce it as traffic. Or crocodile, crocodile, we would pronounce it. So, as we said, there is no work on the word final geminate vowel insertion. I'm going to work on that, and before that, I have two hypotheses. In terms of the phonetic hypothesis, I thought, inspired by Miato, I thought that this vowel insertion, or let's say vocoid insertion, is going to be more probable after stops, in order to kind of differentiate the word final geminate than the word final singleton, because in non-stop codas, Miato actually says that there is a more articulatory hints to use and perceptual hints to differentiate singleton and geminate codas. So I hypothesize that in Persian it will happen the same. And about the phonological rule, I hypothesized intuitively that there is not going to be any phonological contribution in the syllabification. Like, what I mean by that, like, for example, for the word word final geminate in a long word, ha, which means right. Okay. I never thought that the Persian speaker would syllabify this word as ha, okay, but apparently they do. We will see. So my hypothesis, the second hypothesis, is that it has no phonological role. So let's see. So my methodology. It's actually a pilot study for now. So my speakers are two native speakers of this language.
And I use Pratt software to analyze the data. So altogether, I have 82 target words, which will be shown in the next slide in Persian alphabet, in which we have a diacritic for gemination. So the speakers were seeing where the geminate is. So this study consists of 4 main parts. The first part is a read aloud task. I provided the speakers with the target words and I asked them to read them aloud for 3 times. In total, I have 492 tokens. And then I analyzed the data to detect the vowel-like thing. And what was my hint? The acoustic evidence was the frequencies and the pattern, the periodic pattern in the waveform. So, and the syllabification test, I asked the speakers to clap and also to count the number of the syllables of the words. Then I ran a OT analysis according to my results that I had from the syllabification test and the acoustic analysis. So let's see what are the target words. As you can see, which one shows? I think. Okay, as you can see in the target word in the first column, gufto gap. Okay, gap is my target word. Okay, the second word in each cell is my target word. The first word is a carrier phrase that before that, let's say, we have the words with singleton coda and with geminate coda. Singleton codas are formed from Persian words and nonce words, and geminate codas are formed from loan words and nonce words. Why did I include singleton codas? To compare if there is any vowel-like thing after the production, any coda cluster in Persian, what Lori Repeti calls as an inherent property of the consonant release. I wanted to see if that's the case or not. So that's the reason why we analyzed also the singleton codas. And why did we include nonce words? First, to add to our target words and also to compare them to the real words. And here it is, yes. And as you can see, the target words, which are the second word in each cell, they all are monosyllabic and they all have a short vowel. So, like for example, gap, that, and oh, I forgot to say that for nonce words, the carrier phrase is a minimal pair. And for real words, the carrier phrase, the preceding carrier phrase is a semantically related word to make sure that the speakers know that they are real words. So, for example, the word gap is going to be compared with dap, and we have no long word with geminate for this, and it is going to be compared with dap, or shap, dap, rap, dap. Okay. Let's see, I already covered this part. Okay, let's see what the results are. As you can not very clearly see, after, like, for example, loan word haq, we have a very, pretty long vowel-like thing. That, let's say, vowel-like thing, Vocoid, okay? With formants, that the formants always have the schwa-like frequencies. The first formant is always around 500, the second is always around 1500, the third is always around 2500. And as you can, again, not clearly see, I don't know why in Canva the spectrograms are not that clear. In the singleton codas, after singleton coda, we never see that Vocoid. And then here, I sorted the occurrence frequency of the word final Vocoid according to the sonority hierarchy of the geminate. As you can see, there is no pattern tendency here when we sort the occurrence of this Vocoid by the sonority hierarchy of the word final geminate. But then So, and also another thing that we can see is that almost always the behavior, the appearance, the production of this vowel-like thing is always the same in loan words and in real words. Okay, so for that, I made a mean percentage of the vowel occurrence in loan words and nonce words to cover all of the geminates, because we saw that there are some accidental gaps in the real geminates. So, and it can be seen that in the first geminates, it's always 100% occurrence, which are basically sonorants, yala, ramana, and then voiced obstruents, and then voiceless obstruents. But we will see in the next slide that there is also a categorization within natural classes. If we sort the chart by the natural classes, we will see more clearly that in sonorants, this vowel appears in 100% of times. After voiced obstruents, 93, voiceless stop obstruents, 56, and after voiceless non-stop obstruents, 14, and after s, h, and sh, it never appears. So, by now, we can say that it seems that both voicing and sonority hierarchy of the word final geminate play a role in triggering that vowel-like thing after the word final geminates. So, kinda, it confirms the study of Miatto in Italian. And it doesn't agree with Bryce that says that the type of the geminate doesn't have an independent role in triggering the vowel-like thing. Well, after that, this is the result of the syllabification task, which shows that always the words with singleton coda are syllabified as monosyllabic, and the words with singletons are almost always syllabified as disyllabic, except for the words ending in h and sh, which confirms the results of the phonetic analysis, except for the cluster s. But since it's just two speakers, we can ignore it for now, and we can say that whenever this vocoid does not appear, the syllabification is like monosyllabic, so it doesn't contribute. So it shows that this vowel, wherever it happens, it contributes to the syllabification. The stress pattern is not examined in this study, but also a short pilot study shows that it also contributes to the stress pattern. So for now, we can say that it plays a phonological role. So if OT analysis shows us that it is an insertion and not a matter of deletion, we can say that it's a matter of a pathetic vowel. And how are we doing with the time? Are we good? 5 minutes. Okay, no, I think we are good. So that's it. And the OT analysis, we are going to see if it's a matter of insertion in the cases that it appears, or deletion in the case of that it doesn't appear. For that, we will include that vowel in the inputs to test with the deletion, and we will not include it in the input to test with the insertion. So these are the markedness constraints that we included. So let's see. As we can see, for the sonorants, whenever the input has the word final schwa, and whenever it doesn't, either way, we will reach the optimal candidate. So in here, it's not a significant factor for us. The same with obstruents, voiced obstruents, it doesn't show if it's insertion or deletion. The same with voiceless obstruents, but when it comes to the voiceless non-stop obstruent, it shows that it's a matter of insertion and not deletion. Why? Because max is a very high-ranked constraint in modern standard Persian. So the OT analysis shows that it's a matter of insertion and not deletion. As a summary, acoustic experiment showed us that this word final post-geminate vocoid is a schwa-like vowel with the form and frequencies of a schwa. And the occurrence frequency test showed us that the sonorants have the most frequency, and the voiceless non-stop obstruent have the least frequency. Syllabification test showed us that whenever this vowel is there, it contributes to the syllabification. And the OT analysis showed us that it's the presence of this vowel is a result of insertion and it's not the case that the absence of this vocoid is a matter of deletion. So, according as we already discussed the view of how we can call this vowel-like thing an epenthetic vowel in modern standard Persian. If you have time, I can very shortly talk about the explanation for 1 or 2 minutes. Do we? Okay, thank you. So this mismatch, let me just point out this last point, that this mismatch between the findings of the studies that they said that there is no, the type of the consonant doesn't play any role in triggering this vowel-like segment at the end of the words. It might be a result of the difference that we always see in the behavior of singleton codas and geminate codas. Okay, so as Krishna says, phonological processes which apply to short segments frequently fail to apply to corresponding long or geminate segments. That might be a potential explanation for this behavior. And that's it. And this is like a reference and thing.
Okay, we have time for questions. Let's get something.
Yes.
Thank you for the talk. I was wondering, you said the syllable structure is such that you can have 2 consonants at the end of a syllable. Yes, you didn't really address those at all. So I was wondering, what are they? I imagine they're clusters of sorts, like RT or something like that. And what happens in those cases, I was wondering.
That's a very perfect question. Actually, it's my second study. And in my, I had some fillers, like within my target words, which had clusters. And that exactly shows that in between some clusters, that also happens. And also after the clusters. So it really means that the type of the consonant really matters.
But if it also happens after a cluster, then it doesn't really have anything to do with
the geminate.
With the geminate.
Exactly. That's the thing. It has something to do with the moraic weight.
Right.
Right?
So that would be even more support for saying, well, it's actually something phonological. Because
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Do we have more questions? No? Okay. I had a phonetic question.
Yes, sure.
Can we go back to the prime data?
Yeah.
Just
Singleton or the geminate one?
Both of them to just to compare.
Yeah.
Why does the geminate voicing does not continue? Why is it voiceless in the gap?
Haqqa, right? You mean that it's okay? We don't have the true voicing. We have a difference between voiced and voiceless consonants in VOT. Yes, we don't have true voicing. We are of those languages. Sorry for that. Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, it's an idea that this vocoid is a continuation of the voicing. because we see that after voiced elements, we see this vocoid much bit more, right?
So sorry for taking over the question here. And you mentioned at some point there was evidence from stress.
Yes.
But you skipped over that. So could you maybe say a word on that?
The reason is that we don't have very comprehensive study, and we see in Persian, the position of stress is always fixed. It's at the end of the word for adjectives and nouns. Okay, so for example, lab. Okay, lab, but you see that the stress pattern shifts, right? It all shows that it's phonological.
And I have a last
sure.
question. Does the performance of the vocoid change after the Geminate type?
No, that's a great question. It didn't change at all. It's always, and the thing is that something that I forgot to mention is that we don't have schwa in our phonemic inventory, but having schwa as the epenthetic segment in the languages that don't have this segment in themselves, it's not very rare cross-linguistically, because it's the most unmarked vowel, right? It's like they call it the most placeless vowel. So it's the most unmarked vowel to be a epenthetic element.
Also, to break up the initial consonant cluster is also schwa also.
No. We use A and O. Because I think this schwa-like segment might be lexicalized later and shift to A, because it is a little bit fronter than schwa. Okay, as you could see. But the history of using those loan words and the history of lexicalizing those words in Persian is much more. So maybe it's a transition period. Yeah.
Thank you for the great presentation.
Of course, thank you for this question. Thanks.
Our next presenter is Mehmet Dadan, and his talk is titled "A Lowering in Turkish Negative Aorist." Let's welcome him to the stage.
Oh, I think they don't build these things for short people anymore, so yeah, maybe I should take that. Thank you. So yes, thank you, Botman. And my name is Dadan, and I'm going to present our joint work with Uğur, Erken, and Dr. Stefano Canalis, titled "A Lowering in Turkish Negative Aorist." So today I'm going to talk about a process that we think is a case of lexical diffusion and in spinning phonologization process in Turkish. More specifically, I'm going to talk about these lexical exceptions, collaborative rule that lowers A, which then, of course, creates these marginal contrasts between A and H. And of course, as the title suggests, I'm going to talk about this interesting and unexpected phonological environment, the Turkish negative aorist mess. Yeah, so this is the outline for our presentation. First, I'm going to give you some background information, then continue with our research questions and our methodology. And of course, I'm going to talk about our results and end the presentation with our discussion and conclusion part. So when we look back to the literature and read more about this ALA process, we see that there seems to be a consensus among scholars that Turkish A and to some extent, lesser extent, have this lower allophone in closed syllables when the coda is a sonant consonant. The real debate, however, is between whether this allophone is an epsilon or an H. So Göksel and Kastek proposed these three allophones for A. It's H in closed syllables where the coda is a sonant consonant, for example, evler, houses. It's epsilon in word final positions, evlerde in the houses, and it's A in other most of the environments, for example, evlerin, my houses, of course. But however, of course, despite the consensus on the general traits of A-lowering process, the detailed acoustic analyses and discussions on next exceptions remain sparse and limited, of course, apart from the unpublished survey by Nichols 2022. So, So despite high regularity, lowering to ash both under-applies and over-applies. And to give some examples from under-application, we have small number first, like elbise, candy, and hem, where a may be pronounced as either as an ash or an a. And furthermore, for some speakers, these optionality in pronunciation in these words may create new pairs such as belli and belli with a race. And furthermore, even furthermore, for some younger speakers, the form with a seems to be the only possible one. And to give some examples from our application, we have even more than the number first, where a seems to be lowered to ash when coda is a voice with fricative. Copeland also report lowering the final syllables of the words like merkez and pekmez, and the negative R suffix mez, but they do not expand or their findings. So these both kinds of irregularities makes the non-occurrence of ash not fully predictable. So we can say that there is an ongoing change, and of course, when we look at this figure from Phonetic 2022, as you can see, as the maybe I can use this. Oh, never mind, I don't know how to use it. Okay, so as you can see on the right figure, the distance between two phonemes of increases as the year of birth of speaker increases. So yeah, that was the figure. Okay, so based on the previous figure and the previous knowledge we have, we can say that Turkish is undergoing a phonological split with the incipient phonologization of its alphabet as a new phoneme. And to the best of our knowledge, the phoneme is not splitting, at least not yet. And this appears to be a case of an explicit split because the division of into two phonemes cannot be fully accounted for phonological terms by a phonological rule in pure phonological terms. For example, it's nearly always ash in the environment when the following consonants are sonorant. What we don't see a lowered counterpart in words like elbise and bel, but it's always near always a or epsilon in any environment, but we see lowered counterparts in negative by suffix mez and words like mez. So then we must ask a question: what is the exact realization of this lowered a? Is it epsilon following Cornfield 1997, or is it ash following works like Cassay 2005? Also, then we must ask: is there a continuum, or do the 12 also form polydistinct sets? Once again, when we look at okay, when we look at a figure from Phonetic 2022, we can see that based on the results, this yes. So as you can see on the right, also on the left, two different clusters for A. In the below, you can see lowered counterpart, which occurs before sonorants, and on the upper part of the circle, you can see the other environments that are like open syllables, and when they are followed by an accent. Oh, I close. Okay. So Labo argues that these type of splits show common properties, and these properties, of course, differentiate them from other sound changes, regular sound changes like neo-grammarian sound changes, and these typically include, first of all, a complex set of phonetic conditions that predicts the great majority of lexical assignments, one of all, a number of phonetic conditions that specify particular verbs, phonologically unmotivated lexical exceptions, grammatical conditions involving morphological categories and morphological boundaries, and a strong effect of word frequency, with more frequent words favored in the change. So I'm going to go over these one by one and see how they apply to our case. Starting with the first one, starting with the first one, we know that typologically, closed syllables favored while lowering, but usually independently of the manner of the color consonant. For example, rhotics might favor while lowering, whereas nasals and fricatives not so much. And also, once again, Phonetic says that defines the environment for A lowering as an environment which is a superset of some sensible set of environments with respect to both phonetic grounding and nature class behavior. So, based on this information, yes, we can say that A and H are indeed in quasi-complementary distribution, but with the exceptions. Exceptions like ash occurring nearly exclusively in closed syllables with a sonorant coda, but also occurring in this negative bar subtimaz, and occurring nearly exclusively in other environments, but also occurring in a word like elbise, where we have the sonorant consonant in coda position. So continuing to the second one, a number of phonetic conditions that specify partial verbs, We have words like mez and pekmez as the only words belonging for the voice vowel fricative. And third one, phonologically unmodified lexical exceptions. We have we can find a handful of lexical exceptions to the regulatory mentioned in one. For example, the exception A in ipse and exception ash in mez. So these first three of all properties had already been discussed in the previous literature in Turkish. But what about the role of 4 and 5? If you recall 4, grammatical conditions involving, morphologic categories and morphologic boundaries. We think that this process being restricted to closed syllables, lowering may signal a word boundary with a quasi-complex status. For example, examples like görmez adam and görmez zamanı in zaman time to appear may, or not may, but should raise the question whether lowering word medial and word final position are treated differently or not. And when we come to the last one, the role of lexical frequency, to the best of our knowledge, no one has ever investigated the correlation between the amount of lowering and the lexical frequency of the word the vowel occurs in. So to sum this part up, in this paper we investigated these 3 questions. Is lowering gradient or categorical? Is the output epsilon or ash? Is there a correlation between the lowering and the word position? And is there a correlation between lowering and word frequency? So in this study, we had 6 Turkish speakers from 3 different age groups, early 20s, mid-40s, and mid-60s. Then we created a list of 50 Turkish words containing A in closed syllables with either a sonorant or an obstruent consonant coda-position. In the end, we had 1,102 number of tokens, 50 words by 3 repetitions by 6 speakers. Some of the words contained more than 1 instance of A, and we also had to discard some tokens as because of issues or problems in the recording session. And for the frequency part, we use CS Corpus V2. Of course, we record these items in a byte room, and the participants altered these items 3 times in isolation. And we use a microphone connected to a solid state recorder, and of course, we record them at a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz. Then we import these recordings to prod and manually segmented for their onset, onset and offset. And then we ran a transcript to get F1 values, F1 and F2 values at midpoints, and then we level and normalize these values. Okay, so when it comes to results, with water break, sorry. So when it comes to the results, we can see that first, when it comes to results, first I'm going to talk about very specific text when encoded with a voice over fricative. As you can see on the figure on the right, it's most in most of the words, whereas in some words, and not some words, but all speakers, in some words for all speakers, we have this much lower realization of essential ash for like in words like negatives, mez, and pekmez. Yeah. Continue with our results. Our data instrumentally supports the previous claims that it's lowered ash before some codas and almost before obstruents. As you can see on the right, of course, higher F1 value means lower vowel, and lower F1 value means higher vowel. As you can see, when we group the sonants and the pekmez and negatives together on the right, as you can see, they are more lower. And on the left, you can see the obstruents where we don't see this lowering. The reason why, of course, if you notice the glide here, the glide doesn't cause lowering. It is, of course, according to Canalis et al., this sound is phonologically it's not a sonorant. Okay, so continuing with our results for 4 of our subjects, we saw that the vowel in suffix mez is roughly as low as before a sonorant consonant, while in no other verb is lowered ash if the coda is an obstruent. As you can see in female 3, male 2, female 3, and female 2, these as that precedes a sonant consonant and as in negative R suffix mez, they seem to cluster together, which is interesting. So, continuing, when the, of course, this we talked about this before, but when the following consonant is sonorant, we see ash, and when the following consonant obstruent, we see, as you can see on the right, the figure is from female F1 values of female subjects, and the discarded mez and pekmez for the clarity reasons. So as you can see on the right, once again, higher F1 value, higher the like 100 hertz is characteristic of low vowels, whereas if I'm very near around like 600 hertz is characteristic of high vowels. As you can see on the right, once again, before sonorants they are quite high. Okay. Then when we come to the syllable position, we found out that more lowering in word final than word middle syllables. We think that the reason why is that since vowel lowering makes similar word boundary, and the word final syllables, lowering is stronger and more stable there. Okay, how much time I have? Lots of time. Okay, I'm going too fast. Never mind. So we find a positive, that is a broad positive correlation between the lowering of A and the corpus frequency of the morpheme belongs to. As you can see on the right, there's a I don't know, there's the correlation simply, and of course there's also a dip. The reason why we have a dip there is just it can, of course, because of different reasons, but still, even though there's a dip, they are still as high as mid-frequency words. So it's one of the things that we want to study further, why we have this dip there. Never mind. Okay, so then we fitted this data to a mixed linear model. We took floating consonant, syllable position, lexical frequency, position of the vowel syllable, and the vowel duration as fixed effects, and word as as random effects. Then we took the category as reference level. And as you can see on the right, we found a statistically significant effect of vowel occurring in negative R's and vowel occurring in thick mass on the lowering of vowel. As you can see there, if you want to put the values, I can just wait for 5 seconds because I'm going too fast anyways. What's rage? Okay, so continuing with our results again, when we come to the use of solar constants, we still have this statistically significant effect of them on the, of course, the vowel lowering, and again, log of lexical frequency and vowel being root fine syllable still has this effect. Okay, so returning back to the levels parameters, not parameters, but the levels properties. We talked about these three before, and also these are already mentioned in the literature before. So we once again proved that these are happening in this process that we are describing today. But also when we come to the fourth one, grammatical conditions, the morphological boundaries with the words like Adam and Mesamani, yes, we can say that in these environments we also see lowering. And it's more lower than word boundary simply. And when you continue with the effect of word frequency, with the more frequent words being favored, yes, we can say that based on our results, since there's a positive correlation between the frequency and the lowering. Okay, so to sum this part up, A lowering in Turkish is essentially categorical for most subjects. Its output centers on ash, which is very distinct from A, usually found in open syllables, and closed syllables ending in an obstruent. And despite its over regularity, it's not pure enough in the process. The vowel in mass and thick mass is as low as GAD. Yeah. And also we found a correlation between lowering and word position. And we find a positive correlation between lowering and word frequency. So to conclude, we can say that the complex and sometimes word specific conditioning, the role of word frequency, the role of word boundaries, and the presence of lexical exceptions all suggest that lowering is expanding to new lexical items through lexical diffusion, establishing the early stage of a phonemic split of A into two separate phonemes. Yeah. So for the further research, we'll explain why in words like A, we don't see is lowering. We want to further clarify the role of dialect, age, education level, and gender, and we want to further expand our environments for A. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the great presentation. Let's get some questions.
Thank you for the talk. I have a clarification question, a real question, and a suggestion.
Okay.
I don't know where to begin, and I hope you can remember it all. The clarification question is, you said there is a correlation to the end of the word, and I was surprised to see that. I mean, I can understand in the case of Elnaz where the very open air is close to the end of the word. But of course, you also have cases like Dadan, where the air is in the stem of the verb and it's nowhere near to the end of the word. So what does that mean? I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe the correlation exists, but then I don't understand why it exists.
Yeah, I think I understood. I know why it exists, but I think for the first part, I think we didn't check, like we didn't compare words like gad and gadim. We didn't compare those vowels in the same root, but we mainly look at, and we are looking at examples like I showed. Let me find the example. So we tried to create these new pairs, Görmezadam and Görmezaman, also like other type of new pairs, and we mainly compared these two values basically for the analyses in the word civil position.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, then it's kind of like saying, well, what you find by design, because you're looking at the cases where it's at the end of the word. So of course, you would find that. But actually, on that slide, that's the second question.
Yep.
In Görünme, where it's claimed that the A is more open or a little bit more open at the end of the word. You know, the Elvis example you gave as well, where people say at the end of the word it's a bit more open. Turkish also has this phenomenon of final accent, like kutu, where the U at the end of the word is much more open than it is at the beginning of the word. That's usually claimed to be limited to high vowels. But there might be a potential link to what you see in these cases to that final vowel accent, because accent is also kind of open. So that might, that's a suggestion really. I don't expect you to know the answer to that, but that might be something that would be worth maybe.
Maybe I can give you some quick teaser about that for our next. So it was a pilot study. We had only had like 50 words and like a small number of tokens. But now we are expanding on this to like 120 words where we have different environments, and at least based on our preliminary results, we found this lowering even in final syllables, in final closed syllables as well. So if you are referring to final lexing as a means of a final segment of a word that's lexing, then I think we can data like that can support or disprove your question.
And the third one, if I may, I'm sorry, I've cut me off if I'm too long. Other Turkic languages have a phonemic distinction between A and A. Is it at all conceivable that what we see in Turkish is not a new difference arising, but an old difference that has been lingering in the language? Now you might say, well, that we have these studies, age of the speakers, and it seems to be on the right side. But then there are also studies by Labov for English, where he says, well, for example, the R in New York City English was gone for a long time, but then it made its comeback. And it was there kind of in a hidden way for the longest time. Could that be okay?
So I'm not just very on the topic, but I think we can say, I think as far as I know from Johansson and Chateau, they said that this Proto-Turkic had, yes, two mid-vowels, but it was mid and mid-high rather than mid and mid-low. So also I think I think it was in Azerbaijani where they had this ash phoneme, but we think that these I think these are more of like innovative. These are, I think, happening I don't think they are just bringing of the past phoneme, but these are new phonemes in a way, if that satisfies your question.
I mean, one way you could look at it would be to look at cognates and see if you find out that they always happen to have the same value, then maybe that's
Thank you for your question.
Any more questions?
Sorry, I'm not actually like in academia, so I apologize if my question's a little stupid. But I know in some publications that this phenomenon is at least like before nasals and liquids, it's called like a waxing rather than lowering. Is there any specific reason why, or a specific academic reason why we're calling it lowering here, or like are they different? And again, sorry, this is a dumb question. I'm not really used to be in places like this?
Well, thank you for your question. I think the reason why we chose code thing, I think first of all, I think maybe we can start with like terms of tense and lags and the way they are using the phonetics and phonology. But I think the reason why we simply chose to choose lags, not like sort of low and high, just to follow the convention in a way. Also, I mean, okay, so let's see the terminology. I don't know how to talk about them, but I think the reason why we chose, I don't want to overcomplicate that, but simply because of conventions or just because of the terms like trans and next being in a way they don't work. Just, okay. Yeah, sure.
Well, slower, we call it slower because essentially what changes the first format is much higher. It's essentially the difference between a mid and a low vowel. So it's a low vowel essentially.
In the other publications that I've seen, again, I'm really just asking this as like a way to receive information, not to state anything. But in them, the lowering or the waxing was shown with the ash rather than the epsilon, or the epsilon rather than the ash. Is that like I guess, indication of whether to call it waxing or lowering?
Well, so focus more on terminology on the tense. There is word final waxing, like it goes back. And there's word final lowering, like it both exist, but into different environments. One is like lowering because it's low vowel. So acoustically it's not that. You can say it's a lax, more or less variable. It's problem. So both exist, but that's some sort of issue. So we can use, of course, both terms, but refer to different powers.
Thank you for the question.
We still have time for one question. You have a...
Hello.
Yes.
Just speaking as a native Turkish speaker, but maybe it's also related to related to Marcus's question is, I feel in my Turkish there is no hash. It's just between regular A and epsilon. But so maybe there has already been this phonetic distinction between two A's, but the lower one is getting even lower among younger speakers.
First of all, thank you for your question. But when you say that, I don't want to sound aggressive about it. Can you just utter a verb, where A is formed by a solemn consonant? I mean, okay. I mean, even though it's always easy to say sometimes that this is an A, it's an epsilon, it's an ash, but always I think we should support our claims with evidence. Anyway. So,
this is just how I hear myself speaking. I don't think I'm pronouncing any hash type of open.
But yeah, of course, it's possible. Why not? I mean, just the different dialects may have different realizations of different vowels.
I think that's it for this session. Thank you so much. And now we have a very short coffee break before the last presentation. So, yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. Right now, our speaker is Samira Hamzehei, and this will be an online speech as she's abroad. And our topic is Onset cluster adaptation in Persian. Hello, we're so excited to have you here today.
Hello, everyone. I'm so upset that I couldn't be there in person. So I'm here online, and I know that you can see me and you can see my screen, but I'm aware that I won't be able to see myself while I'm gonna present. So I'm gonna just make the slideshow bigger and start talking. Just tell me when everyone is ready.
We are ready right now.
Okay, let's start then. Okay, this research is about onset cluster adaptation in Persian. Persian bans onset clusters. That is why this research examines the differences between formal and colloquial Persian in the process of English loanword adaptation by focusing on onset clusters. There are two types of Persian, formal and colloquial Persian. Formal Persian is used in everyday literary works, in formal speeches and formal conversations and news broadcasts. On the other hand, colloquial Persian is used in everyday conversations and modern literature. There are also phonological differences between formal and colloquial Persian. Colloquial Persian exhibits coda simplification. So words like nist become nist in colloquial Persian. And there is also alternation to u before nasals in colloquial Persian. So words like khane, which means a home, becomes hune in colloquial Persian. I also find that in colloquial native Persian words with 3 or more syllables, e is deleted in the second syllable and the whole word is resyllabified. So a word like kareger, which means a worker, becomes karger in colloquial Persian. So there is this e deletion, as you see here, in the second syllable, and then the affected consonant after e deletion moves to the coda position of the previous syllable, which is an open syllable, and it becomes karger. But by e deletion, the word which has 3 syllables becomes a word with 2 syllables and with heavy and closed syllables. For data collection and validation, there were 2 different phases. The first one was collecting native Persian words using a Persian dictionary. Tetrasyllabic or longer words with a, o, e, a, and u vowels in their second syllables were collected, and then they were adapted to their colloquial counterparts by my native intuition. And then in the second phase, English loanwords with stop plus liquid onset clusters were collected, and then they adapted to their colloquial counterparts by my native intuition. Then 3 native speakers were consulted to validate the data. For the analysis, I used optimality theory. The analysis also had 2 phases. In the first phase, formal and colloquial native Persian data were analyzed using optimality theory, and the purpose was to identify markedness and faithfulness constraints in both Persian variants. In the second part of the analysis, English loanwords were analyzed using optimality theory, and the purpose was to see how do English loanwords satisfy or violate these constraints coming from both variants of Persian. This is the compiled data for e deletion that I talked about. In the first column, you see formal Persian. In the second column, you see colloquial Persian, and the third column is the gloss. So words like kareger becomes karger in colloquial Persian, or karemand becomes karmand in colloquial Persian. Javedan becomes javdan in colloquial Persian. So there is a deletion in the second syllable, and the affected consonant moves to the coda position of the previous syllable. And this vowel deletion makes the word shorter with fewer syllables, and all the syllables are closed and heavy. So a deletion, I should highlight this. A deletion does not occur when the preceding syllable is closed. As you see here, all the previous syllables are closed before the syllable containing e. But here, in these 2 examples, the syllable before e is closed. So a deletion cannot occur here. So words like karşenas can't become karşnas after a deletion. These are ungrammatical. So a deletion only occurs when the preceding syllable is open. And this is the compiled data for other vowels like a, I, U, and O. So I have aramesh here. After a deletion, it becomes armesh, which is ungrammatical. For a, I have nojavan. After a deletion, it becomes nojvan, which is ungrammatical. For e, I have parishan. After e deletion, it becomes pershan, which is ungrammatical. And the list just goes on. So we can see that other vowels like a, o, e, and u, they remain in contact in the they remain intact in the second syllable. So the preservation of vowels persists even when the preceding syllable is open. So we can conclude that only a is deleted in the second syllable. You may ask, why this is only a which gets deleted? There are potential answers to this question. The first one can be Persian prosodic system. Persian word stress is not determined by syllable weight, syllable count, or phonological processes. It is primarily determined by the lexical categories of words and syntactic information. As you remember from the compiled data, all the data was about nouns and adjectives, so they receive word final stress. A deletion in the second syllable is not a consequence of its prosodic position. Based on the information I gave you about Persian prosodic system, we can conclude that a deletion is not because of its prosodic position in the second syllable. So what is the answer to this question, why a is deleted? Another potential answer can be underspecified and unmarked nature of the vowel a. Based on underspecified theories, there are two types of features, marked and unmarked. Unmarked features are not stored within the phonological representation, they are predicted by rules. So segments which are deleted, neutralized, assimilated, epenthesized are unmarked. On the other hand, marked features are contrasted and not predicted through phonological processes. They must be specified and stored. Based on these information, I claim that a is the unmarked vowel in Persian for various reasons, because it is subject to vowel harmony in native words. So words like bedo becomes bodo in Persian. A is the default epenthetic vowel in many loanwords. So loanwords like studio becomes studio in Persian. And I also showed you that only a gets deleted in colloquial Persian. Based on these facts, a is the underspecified and unmarked vowel in Persian, which is not stored in the phonological representation, and it is assumed to be predicted by rules. Let's just recap the key points that I've presented till now. This part of the analysis focused on the formal and colloquial native Persian words. The purpose was to identify markedness and faithfulness constraints in both variants of Persian, and these constraints are necessary for the second part of the analysis, which is about loanwords. Why these constraints are needed? First, we're gonna see how do loanwords satisfy or violate these constraints in both variants of Persian. Second reason is, what does the interaction between loanwords and these constraints reveal about colloquial Persian? As you remember, at the beginning of my talk, I mentioned that onset clusters are banned in Persian. So Gormanpour et al. 2019 analyzed adapting English loanwords to Persian considering onset clusters. They found that there are two phonological processes which are used by native speakers to adapt these onset clusters. This is either resyllabification or vowel epenthesis. Word medial clusters are adapted through resyllabification. So English loanwords like telegram become telegram in Persian. And word initial clusters are adapted through vowel epenthesis. When the cluster is S plus sonorant, the pensetic vowel is preferal. So words like ski becomes eski in Persian. In other clusters, the pensetic vowel is internal. So traffic becomes terafik in Persian. They introduced a set of constraints and rankings to adapting all English loanwords in Persian, and they only focused on formal variants of these loanwords in Persian. These constraints and the rankings that you can see on the slides are from Gorbanpur et al. They proposed these rankings and these constraints to adapt all English loanwords to Persian. However, I will highlight two challenges that their proposed constraint ranking encounters. I have two English loanwords here, professor and control. The first Pablo shows the English loanword professor. For English loanword professor, there are two variants in Persian. One is formal Persian and the other one is colloquial Persian. Based on their constraints and their ranking, for the loanword professor, formal Persian, which is porophosphor, becomes the winner. However, in the second loanword, which is control, there are two counterparts again for this loanword, control, formal Persian, and control, colloquial Persian. This time, colloquial Persian becomes the winner based on their proposed ranking and their proposed constraints. So there is inconsistency in choosing the winner. Sometimes the winner is the formal Persian, sometimes the winner is the colloquial Persian, and this is a problem for their analysis. That is why I proposed a novel analysis for adapting word initial onset clusters to colloquial Persian. For that, I have two hypotheses. The first hypothesis says that the input for colloquial Persian is the UR of formal Persian, which means English loanwords enter to formal Persian. And the UR of that formal Persian is the input for colloquial Persian, which may be influenced by vowel harmony. And the second hypothesis states that the input for colloquial Persian is the SR of English loanwords, and metathesis is used to resolve these word initial clusters. I am aware that these hypotheses are complicated. That is why I'm going to walk you through these hypotheses in detail in a few minutes. But first, let's see the compiled data for English loanwords. I have English loanwords here in the first column. The second column is the formal pronunciation of those loanwords, and the third column is the colloquial Persian pronunciation of those loanwords. So professor becomes porophosor in formal Persian and porphosor in colloquial Persian. Promotion becomes poromoshen in formal Persian and pormoshen in colloquial Persian. And the list just goes on. You see that O disappears in colloquial Persian and the whole word is resyllabified, and the colloquial Persian version of these loanwords contain less syllables, and all the syllables or most of them are closed and heavy syllables. Now let's test the hypothesis. The first hypothesis mentioned that the UR for formal Persian is the input for colloquial variant, where regressive vowel harmony applies. There are two types of vowel harmonies in Persian. The first one is regressive vowel harmony, which transfers certain characteristics from a non-initial vowel to the preceding open syllables vowel, like backness or height harmony. And there is this prosodic vowel harmony. Two vowels harmonize for one feature value only when they already share another feature. I should add this point that vowel harmony is an optional rule in Persian grammar, and native speakers can easily undo that. So, for the loanword professor, we have two counterparts, porophosor, formal Persian, which becomes porphosor, colloquial Persian. Let's analyze this example. Professor is the formal counterpart of the loanword professor. When we undo the vowel harmony, we get the UR of formal Persian, which is professor, as you see in the table. So this is the UR of formal variant of English loanword professor. And I have two rules here, deletion and vowel harmony. I just talked about the vowel harmony, and you are familiar with this process, which is regressive in Persian. And deletion, this rule comes from the native data Persian analysis. As you remember, there were only deletion in colloquial Persian. So when deletion is applied, professor becomes professor. Then we have first vowel harmony, which makes it professor. And please just pay attention, this is regressive. And after second vowel harmony, it becomes professor. And then we get the colloquial Persian SR, which is professor. When we look at the Persian SR, we see that there is this O deletion, which makes professor in colloquial Persian. However, we remember from the analysis of native Persian data that there is only a deletion in colloquial Persian. So a deletion is over-applied here, extending beyond its unusual context. And a deletion and vowel harmony are in counter-bleeding interaction, which is an opaque interaction. But I should say that this hypothesis is not preferred, and these are the reasons. Rules are not preferred for conspiracy and typological considerations. Rule-based approaches follow a serial framework. However, constraint-only approaches employ a parallel framework, making it well-suited for analyzing Persian data. And then classic OT is unable to handle counter-bleeding. Extensions of the OT like stratal OT, parallel OT, harmonic serialism, these extensions make the analysis less economical and more complex. That is why we need the second hypothesis. In the second hypothesis, I claim that colloquial Persian directly adapts loanword from English. And I propose that in the case of word initial stop plus liquid onset clusters, colloquial Persian uses metathesis to resolve these clusters. What is metathesis? When two segments switch places, this is called metathesis, like AB becomes BA. And the constraint in OT for metathesis is called linearity, which signs one violation mark for every two sounds that switch places. As you see in the tableau, the loanword professor and the colloquial variant of it, professor, becomes the winner. So these new constraints and these proposed ranking works for adapting English loanwords to colloquial Persian. Just to make it clear, you see the Hassa diagram here. These are the proposed constraints and their rankings, which works perfectly well for adapting English loanwords to colloquial Persian. So what can we conclude from all these analyses? Let's just remember that there was a deletion in native Persian words. And deletion is not dependent of Persian stress patterns, is dependent on its unmarked and unspecified status in Persian grammar. And a deletion in the second syllable created closed and heavy syllables. So there maybe is a primary and secondary stress system in colloquial Persian, suggesting the deletion of vowels in unstressed syllable. As you remember, I mentioned that for nouns and adjectives, the stress falls on the final syllable. But there is this deletion in the second syllable. So maybe colloquial Persian suggests the deletion of vowels in unstressed syllables to create closed and heavy syllables. In the second part of the analysis for loanwords, there was metathesis for adapting onset clusters. Metathesis also created words with fewer syllables, closed and heavy syllables, while such syllables are less preferred in formal Persian. Using metathesis for onset cluster adaptation in colloquial Persian mirrors the effect of a deletion in native Persian words. So the adaptation of English loanwords to colloquial Persian does not replicate the patterns in native data. In native data, there was a deletion to create closed and heavy syllables, but in loanword data, there was metathesis to create heavy and closed syllables. So the loanword adaptation does not replicate the patterns which was presented in native data. And these differences led to similar outcomes through the application of distinct rules. This represents a case of a standard conspiracy, where different processes collaborate to achieve the same end. So we can conclude that Persian speakers have two distinct grammars for each variant of Persian. And these are my references. Actually, these are only the selected ones. And I want to thank you for your patience. Thank you. This is all I have.
Thank you so much. This was such an insightful, beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
Have questions? Can you come to the stage? So, where I'm coming from? You're just gonna talk. Okay. Thank you for the great presentation. I just have one question. I think it was the last slide before the conclusion, maybe 24. The last
24. This one?
Yeah, one slide just before that.
Okay. Here?
Yes.
Okay.
So in this tableau, you are including the constraints, ranking, and interactions in one tableau for two grammars, right?
In this tableau, I present that colloquial Persian is the winner. As you see, example number D is the formal Persian. I show that formal Persian is the loser here. So the constraint ranking and the constraints proposed by Gorbanpur et al. Papers works only for the formal Persian, and this tableau, these constraints and these rankings work for the colloquial Persian, and formal Persian is the loser here. So I show the grammar for colloquial Persian and the grammar for formal Persian were showed by Gorbanpur et al. So that is why I concluded there are two grammars for different variants of Persian.
Their candidate might be the winner candidate for the other register, which means there are two different grammars.
Exactly, yes.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you so much for this presentation again, and we hope to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening. It was an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
So this was all for today. We hope to see you again tomorrow because we have many more interesting speech. Take care till tomorrow.